Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm super excited to be showing you how to make jungle breaks. So this is what we're going to be making in this video. So yeah, and as always, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets in the description. Today they are free, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it'll be available shortly without a download gate. And yeah, let's get started. So, like I said, I'm going to be showing you how to make your own jungle breaks, how to kind of get the more authentic sound, how to make it sound, really nice and crunchy, and also kind of like modern as well. I feel like, it's easy to get kind of like a more old school sound with what we have now, compared to how it was a little bit more difficult back in the day with like samplers and stuff. But I'm also going to be talking to you not just about how to chop up breaks and do all that, because again, that was difficult back in the day, but very easy to do now. But also just how to really make it sound like clean and modern and still have some crunch to it and some texture, but make it really work in like a more modern track. So this loop here that I just played you, it's basically 3 layers. We have like a drum break, and then we have a hi-hat, which is these 2 layers. So I'll talk about the drum break first. Here's what we got going on here. So I have the Think Break by Lynn Collins. I'll play you the one that I'm using. And what I've done here is, you can see I've warped it to the speed of this track. Now you'll see in some places it's a little bit off. That's okay. That's kind of what you want, to give it a more realistic and sort of like organic feeling. The way that I did this is that I basically took the break in here and we unwarp it, and then I just dragged this over, and then what I did was I pitched it up until you'll see it kind of like lines up with the grid here. I believe it was +2. Yeah, there we go. So you can see now it's unwarped, but for the most part it's in time. And then I was just playing around with that, and then once I did that, I warped it, and yeah, so it's not really that hard. You can see I just kind of chopped this up. I was trying to get creative with it, like putting these little ones on the 16th notes there. I haven't heard that a whole lot. There's this little part here. I'll turn off this filter so you can hear it. And the way that I did that is basically it's just the regular snare, and then this one is the snare, but I stretched it way out. So I just took the snare, and then you can make it faster or slower using these things. I just slowed it down to the slowest it would go. Like that, I think. Yeah, there we go. And then I set it on this texture warp mode here. So it's kind of like you're hearing that like glitchy, like kind of texture there. So yeah, and then that was how I did that. And then I also have this one here, which is the kick. And I stretched it out, and then I reversed it. So again, just kind of like playing around. You can hear it gives it kind of something a little bit more interesting. This is something that I feel like is one of those more like modern sounding things. Like, not even so much that this is something you couldn't do back in the day, but this is something that you wouldn't really hear in a lot of like older jungle tracks. But it sounds cool, because it kind of gives it like a more fresh, like glitchy sort of thing. So yeah, and then again, it's not that hard. You can also see like chopping in chunks is a good way to do it. Like, for example, here I have that whole little, it's just that little thing. So I've just basically taken that and like moved it over, instead of trying to do it with like each individual hit, just try to get little phrases and piece those together. So then as far as the effects go on this one, I have a few here. The first thing I have is this auto filter. And so I'll show you, if I solo this, you can hear it a little better. Here is with that. And then without it. So this is kind of a cool way to make the break more dynamic. You don't have to do this, as you can tell, like without it, it's definitely a lot more like raw. And that can work really well as well for a lot of situations. But if you do want to add something a little extra here, you can hear, I feel like it really brings it to life and gives it a lot more nuance. Basically what's happening here is I have the LFO on, moving it very slowly. So it's like opening and closing the filter, just kind of like that. But then what I also have is an envelope. And so the envelope is taking all of these peaks. This works really well with drums because it's taking all these sort of like louder hits here. And you can hear it's kind of making it like a pluck. Like it's like doing a quick close. And then, so we have that movement happening with the LFO. And yeah, it's a really cool way to bring the break to life and make it not just sound like so simple. Again, not like completely necessary, but it is a cool technique. After that, we have a bit of reverb, and this is very subtle. You can see I have the size down very low, the decay time is down very low as well, the dry wet is down pretty low even. Here's without it, and then with it. So you can hear, it's very subtle, it's just giving it a little bit of space, but it does really help to bring it to life. This is another one of those things that kind of helps make it not just sound like dry audio, and makes it, again, just kind of come to life and have a bit more, like, space to it, I guess. So yeah, definitely a good technique there, like, just putting that reverb on, and just keeping it really subtle, but still audible. It's a really good way to bring the break to life. After that, we have this EQ8. Here's without it. And then with it, so you can hear this is not doing, like, it's kind of subtle, I'll say. Like, it's kind of just focusing on the ranges we want. I have, like, a low-end boost here, and then I have this cut around 202 hertz, or at 202 hertz. Which is just kind of getting rid of some of those muddy frequencies, This is one of those things that makes it sound a little bit more modern. There's something about this very, like, modern, crisp production in dance music where, like, sounds like this that are very, like, not distorted, but, like, sort of saturated, I should say, tend to be cut there, like, tend to have that range a little scooped out. So that just helps with that. And then the low-end boost is just to give it a bit more thickness and thump in the low-end. After that, the last thing that we have on here is this drum bus. And I'll show you, here's without this. And then with it. So for one, this is adding a lot of texture to the sound. You can hear. It's adding some nice saturation, kind of crunching it up a bit. But what I'm also doing here is you can see I have this transient knob turned down. So what this is a transient shaper. Basically, if you don't know, the transient of a drum is literally just like the start of it. Like, not that part, but this part. Like right here on the snare, like right at this part where you can sort of see the waveform looks a bit tighter. And what happens here is basically with the transient shaper, you're kind of like shaping the sound exactly like this actually. The way a fade works, like how I'm doing that, that's how a transient shaper works. And so I'm using this to kind of dial back and get a little bit of a sharper sound out of it. You can hear, again, without it, it's a little bit more like big and reverby sounding, but without it, or with it. Each individual hit is punchier and it's a lot more focused and it just sounds cleaner overall. So the transient shaper is really, really important. Definitely recommend playing around with that for breaks. You don't even have to use this one. There's a lot of other ones, but yeah, transient shaper, can't live without it for the style. And yeah, that is pretty much it for the break. I also have the hi-hats layered in there. So I'll show you. Basically, we have 2 layers of hi-hats. Here's what they sound like together. And so what this is you can hear the hi-hats are just playing 16 notes, just constantly. This just kind of adds something a little bit sharper over top of the break. Like if you listen to the break on its own, it has like a nice texture to it, but it doesn't have that like sharp, powerful kind of energy that it gets when you add this. So I feel like this is adding a lot in regards to the energy and just kind of like the overall flow of the break. So like I said, it's 2 layers. The first one here is actually just Ableton's 909 core kit. What I'm using here is I'm just using this closed hi-hat. But I wanted to use this because pretty much everybody who has any version of Ableton will have this drum rack. So I figured, like, this kind of shows you, like, you can do it with literally anything. Like, you don't have to have, the best, craziest 909 samples. I mean, not that the Ableton ones aren't already that, but, like, yeah, it's just the Ableton 909 hi-hat. And then I have this layer on there, which is actually made using Operator, which sounds like this. And so you can hear this is a stereo hi-hat. What we have here is we have some white noise going into a bandpass filter. And then that's going into this auto pan. And the auto pan, you can see I have it on 8th notes. So it's going like, it's actually doing 16th notes because it's sort of like double time of whatever you set this to. Because you're hearing each ear at 8th notes, but really, yeah, it's going like, so it's technically 16 notes. But yeah, you can hear that's just like panning it around. And so the goal here is to just basically have a really high-end, like bright layer like this that's just panning. So we get this one sounding a lot better. Like you can hear it just adds a little bit more crispness to it. And so again, this goes with kind of like the more modern thing. Like this wasn't really something that you could do this precisely back in the day so easily. So this is something that we can do now to kind of make it sound more crisp and modern and even futuristic, if you will. But then I have those hi-hats and the break in a group as well. You would probably imagine this is very important because it glues them together. So I'll show you. Here is without any processing. And then with it, so you can hear, the first thing we have here is this drum bus, and it's making a huge difference. This is really like gluing these together and bringing up not just the break and like the texture and the crunch and that, but also just getting the hi-hats up there and giving them that like that strength, you know? And yeah, so it's got a bit of drive, a bit of crunch. After that, we have this EQ8, and with that, I'll show you here's without it. And then with it, so we just basically have like a little low end boost here, a little low mid range boost, and then a bit of a high end boost as well. Or a low mid range cut, excuse me. But yeah, this is the same thing I was talking about before, like the low mid cut, you know, just kind of helps to make it sound a bit more crisp, a bit more modern. The low end boost makes it a lot more like thumpy and powerful on the low end, and again, more modern. And then the high end boost is just to make everything a bit more crisp. I like to think of this as kind of like the HD filter for the break. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for this one. I hope you learned something, and I hope this helped you with making breaks. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Once again, you get the project file and samples, and MIDI, all that kind of stuff in this video in the description for free. So make sure to check for that. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's available for all tiers. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.